Good morning, Year 4. I hope you're all well. Today in English, we're going to be continuing from our work yesterday. Today, we're going to be improving our narrative poems using different poetic features that we already know. So by the end of this session, you'll be able to understand what fully needs to be included in your narrative poem, and you will have been able to edit your narrative poem to include features such as rhyme and repeated language. So today is all about making your poem better, and we're going to be doing the same tomorrow too. To start with, you have your retrieval questions. So can you spend 3 minutes, pause the video and have a go at these questions, please? Off you go. Okay, question number 1. Give a synonym, a word that means the same, for the word convalesce. Well, if you remember from our reading sessions, that word convalesce, Fred went to Brazil to convalesce with his cousin. It means the same as recover or get better, so that could be one of your synonyms for convalesce. Number 2, give a definition for the word unobtrusive. So this word unobtrusive was a word in our reading sessions that Fred was described as quite often, wasn't it? And this unobtrusive word means not attracting attention, quite a quiet child, quite timid, doesn't really get in trouble. So that is what unobtrusive means. Number 3, put the inverted commas and punctuation in the correct place. Well, you can see here that there are 2 bits of direct speech. No, shouted Henry, do not eat my ice cream. So we know here that the first part of direct speech is just this word no. And this word needed to be hugged with our inverted commas. And we can then see that the reported clause states that it was shouted by Henry, which means that I wanted to put an exclamation mark rather than a comma before my inverted comma ended my direct speech, because this gives the reader a sense of how Henry was feeling. And he sounded pretty angry. And then because I'm about to open up another piece of direct speech that links to the first bit, it's being said or shouted by the same person, Henry, we do not need a capital letter at the start of their next bit of direct speech. We keep it at a lowercase because it's the same sentence, it was just broken up by this reported clause. So we can hug the second part, do not eat my ice cream, in these inverted commas. And whilst he was still shouting, I decided to use the exclamation there too. Bear in mind that I have used my comma before I've opened up my second part of direct speech. Because remember, if our direct speech comes after the reported clause, we always need a comma just before we open up the inverted commas. Well done if you got all those right. Fantastic. Let's just remind ourselves of Robin Hood's Bay, the poem that we were looking at by Michael Rosen yesterday, the narrative poem, and we were trying to make our own anecdotes into narrative poems by using the narrative poem checklist of features here. Now, yesterday we looked at introduction, we looked at characters, we looked at plot, we looked at dialogue, and we looked at a chronological series of events. Now, today we also looked at regular rhythm and stanzas as well. Today we'll be using even more of the poetic features in our narrative poem. So far, this is where I am up to with my narrative poem. I have used structure in my narrative poem. I have had a go at making a regular rhythm. I have used stanzas. I have used dialogue. I've also started to use time sequencing words such as then, minutes later, finally, and that has all helped to get my poem one step closer to being a narrative poem. But we need to add some more features, and today we are going to focus on repetition and rhyme. First of all, we are going to think about this rhyme, and we're thinking, to think about which words I'm going to rhyme, let's think about which words are going to be easiest to rhyme. For example, Indonesia, is that going to be really easy to rhyme? Probably not. Mount Batur, it could find a rhyme, but it's quite tricky. Now, we want to make sure that our rhyming word comes at the end of each line if we're going to rhyme, because that is where, when you read it, you can hear the rhyme better. So I'm thinking my introduction doesn't give me much room to add some rhyme, so I'm going to start on my next verse. This sounded exciting at the time. Ooh, Time seems like a really good word to try and rhyme. So now I'm going to think of all the words that could possibly rhyme with time. Can you think of some? Pause the video. Okay, I wonder if you've got the same words as me. I've thought of these 4 words just off the back of my imagination that could rhyme with time. Chime, climb, crime, lime. Now I'm thinking, yes, they all do rhyme with time, but what word fits the most with what I am saying? Chime, it's not really relevant to climbing a mountain. Oh, climb, well, we are climbing a mountain, that could make sense. Crime, we're not doing anything bad. And lime, we're not eating anything here. So I'm thinking I might use the word climb. And now I'm thinking, where could I fit this in? And we saw from the lots of the poems that we've read so far that they normally leave a line and then choose to have the rhyme on the second line after the first word. So this word climb would have to be somewhere around here. So I'm now thinking, how can I change this sentence to make it make sense with the word climb in? So now I've changed from I realised we had to wake up at 1:30 in the morning to she told me to wake up at 1:30 a.m. to make the climb. That still doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to have to try and jiggle it around some more because that's okay. It's your poem as long as it makes sense. I'm going to try and jiggle it around a bit more. So all of this in red is what I've changed. But then she told me, wake up at 1:30 a.m. to make the climb so that we can arrive ready to watch the sunrise at the summit. So now you can see how I've gone from having this poem, this verse, to changing it and even adding some dialogue here just so I can make it make sense. You will notice, Year 4, that when you are editing your poems today to try and include rhyme, they won't always make sense straight away, and you might have to jiggle around your sentences to make them make a little bit more sense. And I really like the sound of this now. This sounded exciting at the time, but then she told me, wake up at 1:30 a.m. to make the climb. So time and climb. Lovely. So now it's your turn. Choose just one word from your poem so far that might be easy to rhyme and make it rhyme. Pause the video here and off you go. Okay, did you manage to find one that you could rhyme? Fantastic, I'm really looking forward to reading those. Let's do another example together then. So, when I was reading through, I was deciding which maybe stanzas or verses I wanted to rhyme next. I didn't want to rhyme this one because I noticed I already had a rhyme without realising. From head to toe and began to take a leisurely hike up the volcano. So that already rhymed and that really made me happy. Then I'm thinking here, we had to take it easy since it was so steep. Steep. Lovely. So steep is a really easy word that you could rhyme. We could have keep, we could have sleep. Now I'm thinking, what other words rhyme with steep, knowing that I want to include steep in this line here. Now my friend twisted her ankle. How might she feel? She might feel sad, she might cry. Weep. Weep rhymes with steep. So I can try and get that word weep in this line somewhere. Now I have changed my sentence from my friend twisted her ankle to my friend began to weep. Now that hasn't changed the meaning of the text because I've still stated here that she's broken her ankle, but now we've made a rhyme. We had to take it easy since it was so steep. Halfway up to the top, my friend began to weep. Wow, so now we have made another rhyme just by changing a bit of our sentence. Can you see the difference between this one here, where we had to change quite a lot, and the difference between this one here, where it fit really, really nicely? But always make sure you're choosing those words which are really easy to rhyme. It makes it a lot easier for you. Another word that we could rhyme, I decided to skip this stanza and move on to this one because it had the word on. And I thought the word on, surely that must be easy to rhyme. And then I started thinking what words rhyme with on. Most of them were just nonsense words, they didn't make sense. And I had to include this word that rhymed with on this 4th line here. So what I thought was I'm going to move my sentences around a little bit. So I'm going to change the meaning of them. So now I've decided to use this word on my 4th line and along, which rhymed with on, sort of, in my second line. So minutes later, she plodded along painfully, but she said to herself instead of said so herself. So this is her speaking to herself. It will be breathtaking. Come on. So she's giving herself a little bit of pep talk. Come on, you've hurt your ankle. Get up, keep going. So that was my second part of the rhyme. Sorry, third rhyme in my poem so far. My final rhyme that I wanted to decide is the word top, because I thought, oh, top could be easy to rhyme. I could rhyme it with stop, I could rhyme it with hop, I could rhyme it with flop. What might make sense? Well, we got to the top, oh, and then we had a stop. How can I make this make sense? I've already got the word top here. I definitely wanted to change that because that made it a bit and not as good of a poem than if I changed the word. So what I decided to do is I decided to use the word stop. And in my final line of my whole poem, I decided to write, we even met a little friend and we had to stop. So there was no choice, we had to stop because we really, really, really were so happy to meet a monkey. Okay? So you can see how I have thought about what words I'm going to rhyme and how I'm going to make it work. Now, what I would like you to do is have a go at adding some more rhyme to your poem. And what I want you to do is pause the video and have a think. But then your task for today is to go back to this and keep adding rhyme in there too. So don't worry too much if you still need a bit more practice. But pause the video if you do need time now. Okay, so we've looked now more at rhyme. So the final thing that we are going to look at in this session is repetition. Now, we want to repeat those words that might be quite significant in the text. So when I was reading, I was trying to decide what words could I repeat in here that I want to emphasise and what I want my reader to understand. And I was thinking in this third stanza here, where I say, then I moaned. We know in Michael Rosen's poem, a lot of the time he says, he said, she said, then I said, then she said. And I'm thinking, maybe I could mirror Michael Rosen and use where I've written another reported clause before some speech and change this into moaned so that it repeats what I've previously said. And then I went over here and I saw my other part of speech, and before it I'd written she screamed. And I thought, we can change that slightly, and instead of screamed, we can actually repeat ourselves and say, then she moaned, because then we've got that repetition of these reported clauses here. And I just think it makes it flow a bit nicer when it repeats a bit. So that's something that I really wanted to repeat because that's what Michael Rosen does with his reported clauses too. Another thing that I noticed I'd already repeated is this word breathtaking. The view will be breathtaking. It will be breathtaking. The view was breathtaking. All of this repetition here emphasises the point, the reason behind me and my friend going up this mountain, up this volcano. Despite how tiring it was breathtaking. So if you have a word in your poem that you really want to emphasise, try and find somewhere else where you can repeat it again, because it really, really does make the reader understand how you as a poet are feeling. Okay? So we've used repetition and we've used rhyme today. And what I would like you to do is spend the rest of this lesson really thinking hard about how you could use rhyme and how you could use repetition in your narrative poem to make it more like a narrative poem. I will be attaching some advice on the resource sheet to help you, and I'll be attaching my version and my changes too. Tomorrow we will be tackling the final features, including alliteration and similes, how to use language to create imagery, and also to see if we've got any of this chatty language in there so far. And then your task for tomorrow will be to make sure the rest of these features are included in your narrative poem, and then it will be time for you to read them using the intonation and the volume that we learned right at the start of our narrative poem unit. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in our next lesson. Bye, Year 4.